Wait a second, Ashley wasn't planned, but Scotty, the guy she was with, was. Garcia, are you still there? Possible they were his first victim. Media reports about Brandon and Vincent were consistent with the type of torture Gavin suffered, but theirs was much more severe. Like the child soldiers being recruited by the rebels in Sudan, they lacked the physical and emotional maturity to resist their captors. That submission may have earned him a degree of freedom. He's still a teenager, so maybe the best way to reach him is through the media. It's possible Daniel has access to a television, maybe even the internet. Right now, it's all we have. I don't know, most serial numbers have at least 9 digits. He keeps repeating the same 5, which means it has some sort of special meaning to the unsub. Maybe it's a military code? No matching DNA sample. You know, the underwear ritual may be about symbolic humiliation. Familiar sounds, visual cues, even olfactory inputs can trigger memories and emotions we thought were long gone. Happens to me every time I go home, too. It's been like 422 days. Went dormant for 16 years, but later sent letters to the media claiming credit for his crime. Sunsub wants to show his peers that he's so evil he can commit the murders that Russell didn't. Speaks to the killer's prep work, but also his desperation. He chose a location to lay in wait, but wasn't capable of adapting to a target on the phone. If the walls are trophies, he could be seeking recognition for his work. He could be recognizing in his victims a behavioral trait consistent with the object of his raid. Guys, I think the 5-digit number Daniel is reciting is a police badge number. 35 years and they're upstanding citizens. Husband's the block captain, the wife's on neighborhood watch. Have you been able to determine approximate time of death yet? In the 80s he did, but to be honest, from 2000 on, he's barely in here. It's like he's practically invisible. Isolation coupled with homicidal ideation would have made him even more reclusive. Maybe they're not targets, maybe they're surrogates. You mean it's similar? Blake was right, it's a recording. We believe the same person who killed Andy Tafford killed Frankie Clavin of Memphis 15 years ago. So families with young sons should remain vigilant, and we ask that if anybody saw Andy Tafford late at night or at any time with someone fitting our suspects, thank you. And her tone changes. When she says stop, she sounds afraid, but then the rest is matter of fact. And it would be a shame if we had to shut your shop down. What were their names?
Maybe we should ask Morgan for help. He has really good abs. He knows about all this stuff. He can probably, like, teach us some tricks, help us train. You work out? That's cool. I don't. He can be enthusiastic at times. I'm just gonna have a heart attack really quick.
But then she decided to send the Grand Canyon instead. This is a populated area. We compromised his original disposal site, but this is a far cry from the desert. He's certainly less concerned about concealing his crime. Look at this. 2 out of 10 isn't a countdown at all. I think he might be referring to a hobo code. Signs of sexual assault while the male did not. 1 millimeter shorter. The holes are too small. I think it's most likely an ice pick. Exactly, then they replicated it on the other victims. It's actually quite masterful. Add that to the neatness of the crime scene, and I think we're looking for someone with OCD. The precision is astounding. Indicators of sexual assault. I believe the stabbing in the chest is symbolic of unfulfilled sexual desire. Another victim was found within the last 2 hours. We believe the kills are accelerating. Do you remember anything strange about that day? Almost makes you consider euthanasia. Comfort measures, but that's about it. But just all in my head. It's just all in my Most ritual cannibalism involves the consumption of particular organs as a means to commune with the deceased. So he didn't have any human bite marks. Of course, that could be how he's doing it. That's why it was undetectable. Brain tissue, we need to look at brain tissue. He's rabies, and that wouldn't show up in an autopsy except in brain tissue. That he somehow facilitated human-to-human transmission. It also means the holding period isn't about torture, it's about incubation. He wants to show the world the horrors of what he was forced to endure as a child.
FBI! Don't move!
We're getting warmer, aren't we? You tell us. Did he have anyone with him? You know, I know his house was clean, but did you see his shirt and shoes? They were messy. There's no way this guy is OCD. Maybe she couldn't because she was still under Joe's control. Which speaks to the unsub's physicality. In their case histories, both men filed dozens of harassment and nuisance lawsuits against each other. Then, in 2011, Matthias Lee filed a civil complaint against Clark Howard to kiss his ass. Clark Howard responded with a motion to go. You know, you can't actually do that with a male anatomy. Buried them all in the exact same spots. The disposal site's obviously important to him. And that means it's not about who he kills, it's about how he kills them. None of the victims had a documented address, so it's likely they were homeless. They may have known each other from the street or from a shelter. People who were trapped by financial constraints. There are at least 1,500 people who live in the flood control tunnels. Based on where the victims were last seen alive, plus the most accessible locations in the tunnels, I've narrowed down the two most likely sections they stayed in. They're 22 miles apart. The nearest tunnel access point is C16, that's 30 miles from our other location. Luckily, just some superficial nicks and bruises. How are you doing? Yes, please. I can't stand hospitals. It's something about the lighting. Won't be long now. Yikes. We need to have the ME test for rabies vectors in the brain samples. We just received confirmation from the coroner's office that each of the victims died from rabies. It has the highest case to mortality rate in existence. There is, but the post-exposure prophylaxis is only effective if administered within 24 hours of infection. Once the symptoms appear, the prognosis is death. It is not easy to obtain a sample of the virus. We think he most likely started with an animal. It travels a few millimeters a day until it reaches the brain, but if you were to infect the area around the head or the neck, the distance would be shortened. The Mountain Man. Maybe we should hold off on that. The Mountain Man seems to be a confluence of several local legends. But the one thing they all could agree upon, you chant, "I hate the Mountain Man" 3 times, he'll pop up behind you and kill you the next time you hear Leonard Skinner on the radio. Concertina formation was exactly what was used to kill Clark Howard and Matthias Lee. Wire number 3 hasn't been found yet. No, it is not. Any sign of sexual assault? Or bitten by a human? Were you able to obtain DNA samples from any of the bites? Considering the specificity of the MO, the body count, and the timeline, I'd say those odds are actually pretty good.
Don't forget to subscribe, follow, like and comments for updates.